After a couple years of waiting, another season of The Dragon Prince is finally here, and honestly, they could have kept this one to themselves. Like, I didn't need this in my life at all. Coming off of the big climactic events of Book 3, I figured this would be more of a slower transition volume, but the pace was just all over the place. It felt like so many things happened, and yet nothing happened at all. I was on the finale and didn't even realize it because it seemed like the story was just getting started. It took almost 4 episodes before our protagonists even started their journey. That's over half the season, man. And even then, a lot of things that should have happened get sidelined for just more walking in the woods. Soren finding out Viren is alive, and they have no conversation at all. And then the whole rayllum and Callum thing, which I'll get into more later. Plus, they worked in a couple retcons too, the biggest to me being when Ezrin says that Callum is the first human with primal magic in centuries. Like, that was a huge part of Callum's character arc in previous seasons, how humans are supposed to be able to tap into that, and Callum was seen as crazy for trying to do so. But there was one long ago that we're just hearing about now, I guess, question mark? And you know what, for a season titled The Mysteries of Erebos, there wasn't a lot of Erebos. But he probably had the best scene of the season. That and Ezrin's speech tying in with that fight with Claudia were probably the standouts of the season for me. I love when two scenes can mirror each other, and they pulled that off beautifully. Then the thing is, for seasons that are only 9 episodes, you don't really have time to add any filler to the story. I mean, I love Amaya as much as everyone else, but everything for the Sunfire Elf camp just felt out of place and has no influence on the greater story as a whole. And there was just so much wrong with this plotline in general. Like, I get wanting to show the difficulties of 2 separate groups or cultures living together, right? But with these kind of things, you need some level of nuance or just basic common sense. I mean, you would think after 2 years this ritual would have taken place over a number of times to where they would have some specific protocol for it, especially after a lot of them would have died in the last season. And then the architect is just like, hey, let me trample over this sensitive cultural ceremony to honor the dead. Why are you guys mad at me? No type of nuance at all. Plus, Amaya downplaying it felt really out of character for her, and for how much she's grown. That's something that Book 1 version of her would do, not now when it seems like she's been living with them for 2 years and is marrying a Sunfire Elf who has apparently not told her the first thing about her culture. It really felt like the writers just knew they had these characters and had to do something with them, but couldn't write them into the main story, so this is just what we got instead. Now, the thing that probably angered me the most about Book 4 is rayllum and Callum's relationship. Because Book 3 ends on such a high note for them as a couple, but this season starts with them apparently being apart for the 2-year time skip. Like, that is such an unexplained turnaround from how things left off. But looking around online, it seems to be canon books and an excerpt titled Dear Callum that goes into some of the things that happened during the time skip, including rayllum leaving on her own. The obvious problem with this is that you shouldn't require supplementary material to directly influence the main story, especially when you make no reference to it at all, so the people who just didn't read it are just lost. Only dedicated fans are the ones who are going to be reading this kind of stuff. As a casual viewer, I didn't even know these things existed. So seeing an already saddened Callum and how hurt he was meant nothing to me as a viewer when it was given no time to breathe, since rayllum just comes back by the end of the 2nd episode. From my perspective, it's like she never left, but here we are for a majority of the season dealing with this weird will they won't they tension between the two of them that is forced in just for some added drama, which is meaningless since they pretty much in an okay spot by the end of the book anyway. But the one thing that was probably interesting in Book 4 was the role reversal we saw between Claudia and Viren. I mean, obviously people don't literally get a second chance at life, so having him come back and immediately come face to face with his mortality can create some interesting storytelling down the line, especially now that he doesn't have Erebos constantly whispering sweet nothings in his ear. He's at a crossroads where he can either fall back into darkness or regain his humanity with the time he has left. And on the other side, Claudia has become the more evil of the two. She's pretty much become Erebos' newest puppet and is slowly getting corrupted just like Viren did. Plus, she's just needlessly cruel with it too, which is kind of hilarious. and she's going that extra mile to do what she has to do for her dad, like she always has. And while I'm on this group, I'm gonna just say this: I don't really like Terry. Like, he reminds me of Korg from the last two Thor movies, which is bad for me since they're just terrible comic relief. Plus, it's kind of weird that he's with Claudia since she's like constantly using dark magic, given how that they've established people from Zadia having a problem with that. Now, what I think they're going for is the fact that since Terry is trans, Claudia is probably one of the only people to accept him, so he's willing to look past some of those things she might do. You know, there was this throwaway line saying about him accepting it if she had a reason, but with what we already know, it just wasn't enough to justify it for me. And it's kind of weird how Claudia is dating an elf when she's been talking mad racist about them this season. I mean, I know that kind of thing happens in real life, but still, kind of weird. And I know after all of this, it might sound like I hate this season, but I don't. I still love the world that was created and the characters that live in it, but it was just disappointing on a level that I can't really pin down outside of some of the other things I mentioned. Maybe it's because it feels like they're trying to capture the magic of Avatar instead of focusing on the story. But like I said, this was obviously supposed to be a setup volume for things to come when Erebos is ultimately freed from his prison, but I can't help but feel like we're gonna get around 3 more seasons like this as they make their way to the other archdragons until those pieces can finally come together, and I don't know if people are gonna stick around and wait for that payoff in the end. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see if they can pick up the pieces back in the next book by taking into account some of the criticisms. But from things I've heard, it seems like this book and book 5 were written together, so it may be a tad bit too late. Anyway, we'll just have to wait and see, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.